Okay, my loves. I know there are a lot of you that are out there that are really wondering, how do I even set boundaries anymore? Maybe you didn't grow up with great boundaries. Maybe boundaries weren't really modeled well for you, or maybe you were told that you cannot have boundaries. Maybe you're tired of being gaslighted in your relationships, and you're tired of feeling crazy all the time and guilty for trying to make a difference in your life. If this is you, then I want you to come schedule a call with me. Let's chat about the Unashamed Image Program. The Unashamed Image Program is geared towards you specifically. I am going to be helping you in our next upcoming session of the Unashamed Image. I am personally going to train you how to not feel crazy when someone is gaslighting you, how to be able to stand your ground, to keep your boundaries intact, and to also see through the bull crap. I am also going to be teaching you how to set really confident boundaries that you can really rely on. And I'm going to help you communicate them in a way that really makes sense. Basically, I'm going to help you live a life free of shame and on your terms. If you are ready and you are done feeling all the shame and guilt for trying to set boundaries, if you are not willing to live another moment the way you are right now and in somebody else's shadow, then this is the time to schedule that call with me. It's completely free, no pressure, just love, just support. Go to www.erinandersonthetraumacoach.com. Scroll down the page to where it says, Let's Chat About Working Together. Click on that button and it'll take you to my booking page. If you're ready to live the unashamed life, schedule that call. Let's get you in the Unashamed Image Program, my loves. From my heart to your heart. Bye.
Hey everyone! It's Erin Anderson with the Erin Anderson Betrayal Trauma Coaching. I am super excited that you have tuned in today. Let's get talking about how to heal from betrayal trauma. Welcome to the other side of the struggle. This is a podcast where we talk about trauma, how to heal it, and then how to take it and use it to unlock your mission and your potential, and to use it to live your very best dream life. When you're dealing with betrayal trauma, it can be hard to know how to heal it, how to stop the pain, and to know what your next steps are to take in your own life. And these are the questions that we try to answer here. Trauma has the ability to rob us of our joy and identity, which is why it's so miserable to experience. But with the right tools and with the right mindset, we can totally reclaim that joy and even use this trauma to strengthen ourselves so that way trauma does not knock us off of our joy again. Living your dream life should be a non-negotiable, but trauma tends to try to negotiate that with you. And even though trauma is not something that we will completely ever be free of in our life, the pain is negotiable. This is why I created Erin Anderson Betrayal Trauma Coaching and this podcast, is because I want my listeners, I want my clients to live, truly live free from the prison that trauma can put you in. I want you to live on the other side of the struggle.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Other Side of the Struggle. I gotta tell you, I'm really excited about this week's podcast co-host with me because when Trevor Heninger reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I think we could do some collaborating here," I was like, "Oh, okay, well, tell me a little bit about your story." And oh my gosh, yes, this guy needs to be on our podcast because and I'm gonna let him kind of share his own story. I'll say that, and you guys will kind of understand why I was like, yes, you guys need to be here because one of the things that I consistently get asked is what the crap is going on with my husband? What the heck is going on with his head? Like, I feel like I'm his mom. I feel like I have to baby him. Like, we've got a Jekyll and Hyde going on, and I am so confused. Like, I don't even know what to do. And so I'm gonna let Trevor kind of introduce himself to you guys, tell his story a little bit, and we're just gonna get into this from there. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So tell us a little bit about you, Trevor. Let the audience kind of know you, why you're passionate about this, and like this your story.
Man, there's so much. To go on for hours, but so briefly, my story. I had a 30-year addiction to pornography. I also had an emotional affair 7 years ago. I and went through the process of discovering why. Why was it that I prayed to God every day to get rid of that pornography addiction and nothing happened? I did everything that my church leaders told me to do and nothing happened and nothing changed. It wasn't until I discovered a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, which explained what the author refers to as nice guy syndrome, that I didn't realize that was the actual cause, if you will. You know, you go to the doctor and they give you, a cough medicine when you have a cough to prevent you from coughing, but that's just the symptom.
Yeah.
You know, they don't actually always know the problem. So they just give you something to help with the symptom.
Yes.
And so I felt like I realized the pornography addiction was just a symptom. It wasn't the actual problem.
Yes.
The problem was my core beliefs were messed up. So, and this happens to pretty much so when it comes to Christian men, this is extremely common. I believe that the devil is very real. You'll notice my logo is a man with a sword and a shield. Why? Because we're fighting a real enemy.
Yeah, you are.
And so the devil, he knows, he's like, I can do certain things to a person when they're a young child, or tempt someone to do something that may cause trauma as a child and screw up his core beliefs. Meaning I can get him to believe that he's unlovable.
Yeah.
Or I can get him to believe that he's worthless. And when you have one or both of those core beliefs, it really messes with everything in your life. And the thing is, it's not a conscious belief, right? It's a subconscious belief. It's something in the background. If I was to ask you if you love yourself, if I ask anyone if they love themselves, 99% of the time they're going to say, yeah, of course I do. Like, why wouldn't I love myself? But if you actually, dig deep, do you truly love yourself? Like all of you, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? There's going to be people, most people are going to go, no, of course not. There's that side of me I hate. I despise that guy, that kid or whatever, So anyways, went through that discovery, worked on it through reading tons of books, listening to podcasts, just learning, digging deep, having coaches helping me to realize that by changing that core belief, it changed everything else.
Yeah.
It was weird. It just kind of everything got better. in every aspect of my life. Because when you hate yourself, you don't want to reward yourself with money. You don't want to reward yourself with love. You don't want to, you're like, no, we're shutting it all off, right?
Yeah,
so
it's
it's like,
true.
yeah, it's so true. Anyway, so God's like, hey, you need to figure all this out, and then you need to create a coaching company that can help men so they can streamline it and go way faster. Rather than this multi-year, long drawn-out process. Let's get this done fast, right? Not that there's a fast or quick solution to anything. I mean, I was told by a therapist, when you're really deep into something, if you're in something for 40 years, it's going to take 40 months to reverse it. Because it's so ingrained in that subconscious, right? So it's not just going to happen overnight. But it's way better if you can start out on the right foot and you know which direction to go. You know where you're headed on the map. Instead of giving all these false ideas like, sing a hymn, say a prayer, it'll just go away. No, it's not.
No.
I realized one major thing with pornography. The pornography is really coming from the nice guy syndrome. One of the symptoms is a huge amount of external validation. The man needs external validation, and he gets that from pornography because she's never going to say no. The woman on the screen is never going to say no. And so that this external validation that he's constantly needing, because he's not validating himself, he needs external validation. And so this is one of the major issues. And if you have a husband that's addicted to pornography, he's probably in the nice guy syndrome, and he's constantly seeking for external validation. You'll notice once you know that, you'll be able to see it.
Yeah.
He's fishing for compliments. He's fishing for validation in all areas of his life.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, that makes a lot of sense because, my story is really similar to yours. I'd been through therapy. I had been through counseling, trying to heal, betrayal trauma. And years, not just my husband's, but years, childhood betrayal trauma, relationship, it was just all over the place, right? And once I had healed that, the Lord was like, okay, now you get to go teach what I told you when I touched. Exactly. I was like, what? Me? Right? Yeah. I say this so much because I'm like, that was not what I put down in kindergarten when, the teacher's all like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was not a betrayal trauma coach, right? It was like teacher and all these different things. But no, here I am. I'm a betrayal trauma coach, and I'm actually kind of starting to lead an industry here, which is cool.
Right. Yeah.
But it's really neat. But when you're sitting here saying all of this stuff about the external validation, that makes so much sense, because as I was listening to the Lord, and every single time I would get angry with my husband, I would notice that he would fall back into this really deep cycle, and it would literally pull him deeper into the addiction, But once I started backing off, and okay, I'm out. I'm out of the addiction, not out of your life, but I'm out of the addiction.
Right.
I'm out of this struggle. I'm out of this habit. I'm out of this symptom.
Right.
This is something you are going to have to figure out on your own. But me, I'm going to go figure it out myself. That's when things really improved. So how do you feel about boundaries? It's a legitimate question. A lot of people come to me really struggling with this concept. They often feel guilty for setting boundaries, or they're not sure about even what a boundary is. They've heard the term, set the boundary, things like that, but that's really confusing for them because it's not something that's well taught in our society nowadays, right? They know that boundaries are really important to having healthy, constructive, supportive, and wonderful relationships, but why? And oftentimes they also know that they feel like their boundaries are being violated, but they can't quite pinpoint what the boundary is that's being violated. That's why I've created the Clarifying and Creating Your Boundaries free PDF. You can find out what your boundaries are, how to tune in to what the boundary needs to be, and how to effectively create and communicate your boundary so that way you stay in this place that respects you, respects the other person, but also gives you the confidence in your boundaries so that way you stop being gaslighted, disrespected, and unseen. Having your boundaries really clear gives you a voice and also helps the other person stay in accountability with themselves. So that's not a role that you have to take on anymore. So if you are ready to really have clear boundaries, to really understand what your role is in the boundary, and to give yourself some safety and some protection against people that might try to gaslight you or are just being disrespectful, go grab my Creating and Clarifying Your Boundary PDF at erinandersonthetraumacoach.com. And while you're there, let's schedule a call with me. Come have a chat with me so that way I can really help you master this particular skill, creating boundaries, clarifying the boundary, communicating that boundary, and so that way I can also help you have relationships that show up to support you, cherish you, and love you.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
When we have expectations of someone else, I like to say expectations are just preconceived resentments. Because if we expect someone to do something, then when they don't do it, we resent them for it. If we don't have the expectation, then we're just grateful when they do it.
Yeah, exactly. And you're actually talking about my first pillar here. We talk about intention versus expectation. So each one of the pillars has an adversary, right? And the adversary to intention is expectation. And it's basically where you set a goal, but you want somebody else to go and achieve it. And I know that sounds harsh, but I'm looking at my own thoughts, my own feelings around when I was really deep into my own betrayal. And that's exactly, and even to this day, anytime I find myself in that expectation, I'm expecting my kids to do their chores, expecting this, expecting that, expecting. I am setting myself up for a disappointment because I expect the kitchen to get clean and the kids are, through the whole thing, and they resist and they resist and they resist because there's no reward except for a clean kitchen. They don't care about that. I do. Right?
Yeah.
But I've got to make it a win for them. And now all of a sudden, once I get it into a win for them, I'm back into intention. Right?
Yes.
And that's where we get that's where we get things kind of muddled and I think clouded, is because what's in it for them? And that's what, my husband wasn't seeing when I expected him to heal, right? And get over his addiction and to knock it off and, all of those things, right? He wasn't seeing what was in it for him. It was all about what was in it for me. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Well, and if you've been told since you were a child that that a man who uses pornography is evil, if that's the belief that you are taught by your church leaders, how is that going to affect you and your trauma when you find out that your spouse has looked at pornography? Versus how would it change if you were taught that 80% of Christian men are addicted to pornography
because of the nice
and it's just because they're not feeling unconditional love, they need that external validation because they have some trauma that's happened as a child, And so they need the external validation to keep themselves from committing suicide because they're so deep in their own trauma that they can't find a lifeline. And so this is the lifeline that they found, and it's keeping them alive.
Yeah.
How much of a different response would you have as a wife, your husband's addiction to pornography, if you look at it those two different ways?
Well, see, that you're actually very on point here, because I actually have noticed this, like, and I noticed this in my own relationship with my husband, right? Where I would react, I'd get into my own trauma cycle, and all of a sudden it was triggering his trauma cycle. And I didn't realize that's what it was at the time, that it was a trauma cycle, because, like, you get the trauma, then you get into reaction and blame, you get into like control, and like there's other pieces to this, and I'd have to actually look it up and talk about it. I've actually done a podcast about the trauma cycle. But I would notice that every single time I would get triggered and I'd get angry, like I said, he'd get further into his porn. And then further into the porn I'd get like, and it was just kind of like smacking each other's ouchies, right? Over and over and over and over. And yeah, but I was expecting him, again, there's that word, right, to heal before me, because I thought the only way I could heal was if he actually started to change. But once I started like paying attention to this and realizing that, holy crap, I can actually understand what he's going through better than I thought I could. Because even though I'm not doing a pornography addiction or a pornography habit, that's really what it is. It's a habit.
Right.
It is. It's a binky. It's something to self-soothe, right? Even though I'm not getting into that, his thoughts are the exact same as mine. Exactly. And it all came down to this idea, like you're saying, about self-love. When I finally realized that there is no such thing as conditional love. It's not possible. If you actually love someone, it's an unconditional love. Now, that doesn't mean you don't set boundaries, you let them walk all over you. That's not that's actually conditional love, when you let people walk all over you. Sure. That's actually a result of that, right? Unconditional love, you protect that love with boundaries, but you also honor somebody else's agency as well as your own, right? That's what unconditional love is. And if you think about like the Savior and everything, like, he doesn't beg us to come to him. He just stands as a beacon. He stands in truth. He stands in love. He stands in his own confidence. He's a very confident person. I mean, you have to be a pretty confident person to walk into a synagogue and say, hey, guess what? I'm better than Moses. You have to do that. You have to do that. But here's this wonderful man, totally self-confident, loves himself. Because he loves himself, he's got an abundance of love for us, but he doesn't beg us to come to him. And I think like this is kind of what we're getting into here.
Yeah, for sure. I love what you brought up. We have in our community, our men's community, we have what we call the Divine King Manifesto. And the first one on there is, I choose to follow and strive to emulate Jesus Christ, the perfect example of a divine king. He has all those, what I like to call divine masculine traits. And so we're working on emulating him and those traits, right? But one of the things that, if you look at the New Testament, it talks about the great commandments are what? Love God, love your neighbor, love yourself. That's all you're all commanded to do, is just love. Unconditional love is the commandment, and one of the things that we do in our community is we provide unconditional love for the men who are there. So not only do we learn to love ourselves, but we learn to hold a safe space, because men need a safe space just like women do. It's It's not
Yes.
exclusive to women, right? Men need a safe space. And if their wife is telling them, getting angry every time they use pornography, that's not a safe space.
No, it's not.
And so the way that a man heals, there's lots of ways to heal, but one of the ways that he can heal is by providing a safe space for him to be able to admit that he did something wrong, and he can feel unconditional love and acceptance. When he shares that, then that his heart can start to heal. See, and so this comes from a book called there's an author called Greg Baer, Baer, and he wrote several books on real love. And his real love is unconditional love, right? And he talks about imitation love is the not real love, right?
Mhm.
We're constantly seeking for imitation.
It's
expectation. We're seeking for imitation love. Like pornography is a form of imitation love. Even sex can be a form of imitation love, or external validation can be imitation love, right? But the real love, the unconditional love. He has a book called Real Love in Marriage, which is my favorite out of all of them. I highly recommend, couples reading it, because he really goes into how that unconditional love can actually heal. When someone's willing to be vulnerable and share something that they're struggling with. The problem is they don't usually be vulnerable because they're afraid of the recourse. They're afraid of because nice guy syndrome is based on a fear. So most of the nice guys, they put on this persona of perfection, and they try to be perfect. They feel like they can be perfect, and they act like they're perfect, because if they don't, they're afraid that they're going to be abandoned. It stems from something as a child. Their mother is going to abandon them, right? And so then when they get married, they feel like their wife's going to abandon them. If I admit that I'm doing pornography, my wife's going to abandon me, and the subconscious mind thinks, well, that means death. Because as a baby, if I got abandoned, I'd be dead. And so they are petrified, like literally to death, that if they share when they make a mistake, they're going to die. It's so much worse than you think it is. Even after it's been revealed the first time, every time after that, it's the same thing. That fear of death enters their mind once again. They're like, I really can't share this because they're afraid they're going to die. It's so scary. The fear is so real. And so anyways, just to give you some ideas to how the man feels and what he's going through.
Yeah, no, I can totally see this because with my own husband, like that was one thing that would come up a lot is like so he doesn't lie to me anymore, right? Because I've done so much in my own inner work that he can come to me with the truth, and like I don't get thrown off, like I don't get angry, I don't like nothing. It's just like, okay, cool, like
you've created that safe space for him.
Yeah,
you've created that safe space for him.
But it's because I had to create the safe space for me first.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because like I can get I think like 10 years ago, if I would have said if somebody would have said like create a safe space for him, I would have wanted to huck a tomato at their face, because I'm like, well, what about me, right? Right? It's not like that's not what we're saying here. We're saying like first, like you've got to give yourself the tools you need to be able to weather the storm.
Right.
If you don't have a rain jacket and a torrential downpour, right? You're gonna get pretty darn wet and cold. You've got to have certain tools in order to handle this, right? And this is why, we get into like when you get into like the self-love and the self-acceptance and the what am I looking for? Confidence, right? When you get into being secure with you, this is not a problem. When somebody says, create that safe space, because you're already secure. You're already safe first.
Yeah, right.
It's not up to anyone else. And I'm saying this to men and women and everyone across the board. It is not up to anyone else to create your safety. It is up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we can talk about expectations again in this one. Like, if you're expecting someone else to heal just so you can feel safe, then that safety can still be yanked out from underneath you in a very quick, very real fashion.
Totally.
If you, however, are safe with you and you're giving yourself your own security, that doesn't get taken away.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I agree 100%. We totally need to create our own safe space. We need to love ourselves. We need to be happy on our own, right? All these things. We can't expect anyone else. It's so funny when we get married. It's so funny. We expect the other person to make us happy. Like, how often is that shown in Hollywood? Oh, it's going to make me so happy. You know, it's like, wait.
No.
You're supposed to be happy without this person, you know? If your whole world is based upon, if your whole world of happiness is based upon your spouse, you're in serious trouble. Because yeah, you're not going to make it.
Well, not only that, that's not fair. And this is
right,
honestly probably why, like pornography, betrayal trauma aside, this is honestly probably why there are so many marriages that are failing right now, is because we are putting our happiness and our love and our confidence and our security in the hands of someone else when it never should have been there in the first place.
Totally.
Right?
Yep. Yeah.
And this is like, I love this because like everything you're saying here, is happening with the men, and the solutions to a porn addiction are actually the exact same solutions to healing betrayal trauma. And this is why I'm saying, like, the only difference really between what we're going through, the reason why we are getting triggered is because we are literally struggling with the exact same things.
Right. Yep.
That's exactly what's happening. The only difference is a man turns to pornography, right, for that self-validation, and a woman turns to control. And we don't even realize it. Like, this is all on a subconscious level. Like, a guy's not going to go and be like, oh, I'm going to go look at naked women because I want to validate myself and I need to soothe myself, right? That's not why he's thinking that. He's like, all the emotions, and he knows that it gives him a release. And it's the same thing with the wife. She's not like, oh, I need to control my husband because he's being such a dorkwad, right? She's thinking to herself, this is not fun, and I've got to stop it. I have to stop it. Right? Yeah. And so now she gets into a control cycle and she doesn't even realize she's in it. Right?
Yeah. Well, and it's all, I agree with you 100%. It's all trauma. If you look, it's all trauma. It's like we are all traumatized. Nobody goes through this life without trauma. I think it's so hilarious when someone says, oh, I've never had trauma. Like, you have no clue what trauma is then, because we all experience it. We all have different levels of trauma, of course. But here's the thing. Pornography, impulse eating, et cetera, these are all coping mechanisms, period. We're just, these are coping mechanisms. They help us to cope with our trauma. And so until we heal the trauma, we cannot release the coping mechanism. I could strong will it. I did it. I strong willed my, pornography habit or addiction, whatever you want to call it. I stopped myself for a few months at a time, and I was able to just get the strength to stop, but I didn't heal the trauma. So it always came back. It always came back because that was what gave me that was my coping mechanism. It helped me to deal with my trauma, right? Some people, it's a bucket full of ice cream that helps them deal with their trauma, right? Why is one worse than the other? It's all just coping mechanisms. We just judge the pornography as worse because the scriptures tell us that it's,
it's so bad,
a sin, and it's adultery or whatever, right? And I totally understand. I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying it's just a coping mechanism, just like any other coping mechanism.
There's so much shame and guilt around it. Yeah.
There is. So the focus is focus on healing the trauma, heal the core beliefs. Then the addiction won't even be there anymore. Then it will literally just be a habit. Then it'll just be, okay, so every time I have something, I just choose something else, or I don't act anymore, right?
Yeah.
You can't just consciously do that. Trauma is actually healed.
It's out of alignment with who you are. Once you understand who you are, you don't want to do things that are not in alignment with who you are. That doesn't mean you still don't make bad decisions.
Sure,
but
of course.
But the thing is like, and I'm hearing you say that, like, once he figures it out, he doesn't like figures out himself, loves himself.
Right.
And he does slip up. He immediately goes to his wife. He immediately tells her, but he doesn't put it on her shoulders. And the same thing happens with women, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I realized, like, my emotions were mine, my thoughts were mine, my goals were mine. Therefore, I was actually the one that was responsible for all of those things, not anyone else.
Right.
And it's like I said, like, it comes back to that whole kitchen thing. Like, I want a clean kitchen. And I've got a lot of responsibilities as a mom with 6 kids, a coaching business, 15 chickens, 2 cats, and a dog, right? Like, I've got a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah.
And I do desperately desire that help with keeping things moving.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, I tell my kids, hey, if you can get these things done, then I'll turn the internet on, right?
Right.
Or you get A's and B's, cool, you can have access to the car. Or, hey, and this is a new one with my kids, with my 2 younger sons, I should say, my 11-year-old and my 9-year-old. You get 250 points, you can go pick out a Lego set, right?
Yeah.
And so there's something in it for them. My house is consistently staying actually pretty darn clean. And I don't do anything.
That's
Right?
awesome.
It's just because there's something in it for them. And so when we get to that piece, one of the things we have to understand is what's in it for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
When we heal, we get rid of the trauma and we sacrifice. Like, this is the piece that we're saying here. We sacrifice making someone else responsible for what you are experiencing. Once we sacrifice that, and it's so hard, like, no judgment. I know, like, we have both been there. It's so hard.
Yeah, it is.
But it's totally possible. And once you do it, it opens up a flood of possibilities for what you can personally do in your own life. And it will actually get you to the destination that you want to get to.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I love this. I love this. Okay, so let's talk, if you're okay for a second, a little bit more about this nice guy syndrome. Like, I think a man could probably recognize this in himself, because 30 years, you were in a pornography addiction for 30 years. Most people everywhere will tell you that's impossible to break. Once an addict, always an addict, blah, blah, blah. Like, I hate that.
Yeah.
Right? But
Totally.
yet you did it.
Yeah.
Because you understood that you're trying to be a nice guy. What instead are we trying to be? Like, what else? Like, if it's not the nice guy, like, tell me about the nice guy. What is it? And what do we actually want to encourage instead?
Okay, yeah. So the nice guy, like I said before, it's kind of it's based on trauma and fear, right? So they call them a nice guy because they're people pleasers. Because the way to avoid conflict, to please others, make everyone happy, and there won't be any conflict, because conflict causes death in their mind, in their subconscious mind, right? So avoid conflict at all costs. So help everyone do everything, help make everyone happy, and so that's kind of the premise behind it all. What happens though after years and years of being this way is men will he's not putting his own needs first because he's trying to please everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you don't put your own needs first, what happens? You start to deteriorate,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, whatever, all of the above. When you're neglecting yourself and your own needs, then you deteriorate. And so this nice guy, he because he's not meeting his own needs, he expects his spouse to meet his needs for him,
Mm-hmm.
and so he becomes very manipulative. You need to meet my needs, so he's trying to manipulate her into meeting his needs, so that he can continue to be the people pleaser, because he can't do both. He can't be the people pleaser and meet his own needs. So he expects her to do it, manipulates, and then when she doesn't do it, he becomes resentful, right? There's a lot of resentment coming from a nice guy. So from the outside, the public, the people who associate with him, are going to see that he's a super nice guy. But his wife is going to see this other side of him, like, no, he's not nice at all. He's manipulative. He resents me. All these things, right? And so that's why it's called the nice guy syndrome, right? Because everybody else sees it out. He's, oh, gee, he's such a nice guy, and in fact, she does too. That's why she married him, because he was a super nice guy, because she didn't want to marry a jerk. She didn't want to marry the toxic masculine guy or whatever, right? So the nice guy is the other alternative, right? But what we do at Rise Undaunted is we help men to obviously change that and learn to put their own needs first, learn to love themselves, right? And it's just a process, and the more they do that, the more they heal and transform themselves from a nice guy into what we call a divine king, or someone who has their healthy masculine, right? The goal is to help them to heal their trauma. Once they can heal their trauma, then they're not reacting to everything, right? So now they're healthy mentally, and now they can provide that safe for their spouse or their children or whatever, because they're not being triggered and living in their trauma all the time. So does that answer your question? I know I covered a lot, but is there anything else that you want to know about that?
Yeah, no, that actually totally does make sense, because, I think it's so important to be nice, but we get nice totally mixed up. It's not nice to allow people to walk all over you. And this is something like that I tell my clients all the time. And it's really interesting, because we could really say that there's a nice gal syndrome too. Like,
oh, sure,
a lot
that
of
definitely is.
you're right. A lot of my clients, I'm telling them, like, consistently, you're not the bus mechanic. Stop thinking like you have to throw yourself and everyone and let people throw you under the bus,
right,
in order to have a life, a happy life. You know for a fact that doesn't work. It does not work.
Right.
And so once so what's the opposite of this? It's actually being able to start setting some really firm boundaries. And number one, being okay when other people resent you, because if you understand that resentment is simply this, resentment is there when you have not set proper boundaries.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly what resentment was. Every time I've resented my husband, it was because I failed to set a boundary. When I resent my kids, it's because I failed to set a boundary. When I resent anyone, it's because I fail to set a boundary, right? And so it's the same thing happening with men. It's important to set boundaries and to be respectful of other people's boundaries. When you realize that you deserve boundaries, it's a game changer, and it helps other people to actually know how to communicate with you and to respond to you in a healthy manner. So for like an example, right? I remember, like when I first realized that what, like leaning into the Lord's will, when I did that, I did it for like a year and a half. And I remember my husband coming home and being like, I have been lying to you. I have struggled for this much. I've been looking at pornography this many times, and it was quite a spilling of the guts, right? In a sense.
Yeah.
And I just listened to him, and like there was no reaction whatsoever, like no anger, no nothing. And I remember just being like, "Oh, well, do you want to talk about it?" And it just like slapped me in the head, and I'm like, "Whoa, hold on a second. Like there's no anger, like there's no emotion, like it's just all compassion. That's the only thing I'm feeling right now is compassion. There's nothing about me in this. What
That's
the
awesome.
heck just happened, right?"
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he didn't try to reawaken that in me, because he was feeling some safety in my reactions. And
Mm-hmm.
so when he was feeling resentful of me for, like you were saying, not meeting certain needs because I had boundaries now, I would just implement another boundary, which was simply, hey, I can tell, and the boundaries is usually just telling the truth. I can tell you're really struggling with this. However, you need to understand that what you're doing right now is manipulative.
Yeah.
It's not okay to manipulate me, and it's not going to get you what you want. And
Right.
it's not, and if I allow you to manipulate me, I'm going to turn around and feel resentful of you, and I'm not willing to do that.
True.
Right? And so
Yeah.
it's just simply like laying things out, like laying the truth out in a way that they can understand. That's what a boundary is.
Right.
It's how
Totally.
it works for me, how this is working well for you. Right?
Well, and I love that
And
you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go
Keep
ahead.
going.
No, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, so nice guys don't have boundaries. They usually grow up in a home that doesn't have boundaries. So they literally have no clue what it looks like to set or to even see what a boundary is. You say the word boundary, they're going to think you're talking about, surveying, because they just don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any experience with boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
because they probably were beaten as a child, and their ability to set boundaries was taken away. They were not given the ability to say no. When
And
their parent was beating them, they couldn't say no. They weren't allowed to. So that instantly took away their power to be able to set boundaries.
right. I will say this. I don't necessarily know that every one of them was beaten. I know my
No, I'm
husband
just saying a
wasn't.
lot of them. No, a
But
lot of them.
yeah. I know for a fact my husband wasn't, but I know like as a child, because what I did is I went to school, I became a teacher, and I learned a lot about like childhood
Mm-hmm.
uh, psychology, right? And it's
Yeah,
really not any different from adult
yeah,
psychology
right.
as I've been studying this now. It's really not that different, because what happens is, number one, I just don't feel like boundaries are really taught in general to our
Totally.
generation. And it's not our
Yeah.
parents' fault.
No, of course not.
It's like I think people have not understood boundaries in a long time.
Yeah,
Like they just really haven't. But I know like I have seen like not only my husband but many other men that have struggled in, a porn addiction and that nice guy syndrome. They
mm-hmm.
get into that nice guy because it gets them some attention.
Right.
Like sometimes they're
Yeah.
feeling neglected in some way. And it's not because like parents meant to do that or anything like that. I mean, we grew up with imperfect people teaching us how to live an
Yeah.
imperfect life.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
We truly did. And but what I noticed is it's just more of a we are trying to get something out of another person. Really, a nice guy syndrome is, and it's like you said, a subconscious manipulation tactic. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that way
Yeah.
they can have something,
Right.
right?
Yep. It literally, there's this external validation is a true need, like as in food. Like you can only go so long without food before you die, right?
Mm-hmm.
The nice
Mm-hmm.
guy needs external validation. It
Mm-hmm.
is it is essential. So back in 2016, the same time frame that I had the same time period as I had this emotional affair, um, there was something that happened that caused me to have a huge reduction in external validation, um, and I became suicidal. I literally set a date and time for when I was going to commit suicide. When my wife and kids were gone, and I had set that time, and I was going to do it. And when I look at it in reverse, I look back at it, I realize it was the lack of external validation that was what was put me in that state of mind, right? Because I was like I was like stopping the porn, so I wasn't getting external validation from the pornography. I had some issues, some personal things were going on that just stopped, that caused my wife. I was basically forcing her to not give me any external validation, and so it just shut it all off at one time, and it was just like I just went deep dive right down into the depths of despair. So just to give you an idea how important that is for the nice guy, that external validation. There's so many different ways that it can be supplied, and it's just a coping mechanism it's all it is.
Yeah. And I this is really interesting, and this is why also, again, like, boundaries for a man. Now, I want to put like a little bit of a pause on this, because I know, like, a lot of women, when I tell them allow your husband to have boundaries, like, walls go up. How dare you say that, right? Because if he has boundaries, then she's going to feel more threatened, right? To a degree. But in truth, this is actually what you want for your husband. A true masculine has boundaries.
Yes,
this is true. This is really, really true. Men that feel feminine actually don't have boundaries. And it's the same for women. A true feminine has boundaries.
Right.
Truly. A woman that is really stepping more into a masculine energy is a woman that does not have boundaries. Boundaries really make such a difference when it comes to your relationship. And so even if he's like, when you boundary up yourself and you can see the truth and you are a lover of the truth, it's going to help you, number one, feel secure in yourself. But when you give him the opportunity to have boundaries and explore the boundaries, and when he brings a boundary to you, just discuss it with him, right?
Yeah.
And be like, hey, I can see that you're trying to play with some boundaries here. This doesn't feel like a boundary. This feels almost kind of like a violation to me, and these are the reasons why. Because boundaries also are made when we have good listening boundaries, great talking boundaries, because through those come great feedback.
Yeah.
And once we can have great feedback, we can also understand, like, where a boundary line really does need to be. Yeah. And what I mean by this is, like, like, looking at me and my husband's relationship again, I love the boundaries he's starting to set. I really, really do. I can respect these things. But when he first started, like, getting exploratory into the boundaries, one of his boundaries was, I'm going to do whatever the heck I want, right? And so, like, sometimes I was, like, expecting him to be home by 7. Here it is, like, 10:30. I haven't heard from him. I have no idea what's going on with him. I've got, like, everybody to bed and everything like that, but there's been no communication. And I'm like, it's okay for you to take time for yourself. That is a good boundary. But no communication?
Right. Totally.
That's not.
That's breaking your boundary, because I'm sure you have a boundary that, hey, I need to know when you're going to be home, or at least have an idea,
like,
right?
just what your plans are, so that way I can plan too, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and so, like, things like that. And so, like, this is what I'm saying with, like, the feedback. It doesn't mean I'm, like, gonna be like, you jerk, you were sleeping down on the couch for 10 years because you didn't call me. No, it's just, we get to have communications. We get to talk about things. And once we are, again, secure within ourselves, we can actually have some of the most true, safe, and yet raw and honest conversations possible.
Totally. And that's what's going to help a man to change. That's going to help. Obviously, our goal is not to change our spouse, but we want to help them heal, right? We want to help them heal their trauma. That's
it's an influence. It's influencing them, right?
Right, exactly. One of our phrases in our manifesto is, I set clear boundaries, communicate them well, and stick to them. And so it's super important that the boundaries, the communication, sticking to them, right? That's so important. When he breaks a boundary and you're letting him know, hey, I'm feeling like I'm being manipulated, he's gonna go, if he's deep in nice guy syndrome, he's going, what are you talking about? He's not gonna have a clue what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because it's a subconscious thing, right? It's all happening behind the scenes. He's not consciously manipulating you. He's subconsciously manipulating you. And so you'll know by his reaction when you say stuff like, I'm feeling manipulated, he's going to go, what? I don't understand. And so explaining to him exactly how you feel and what's happening from your perspective can actually wake him up from that nice guy syndrome. I would recommend every man read the book No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. But here's the thing. I've coached a ton of men, and I think only one of them was ever able to read that entire book because it's so painful. Because when they read that book, they realize that they were a lying, manipulative jerk.
Oh.
And do you know how hard that is to swallow when you've done everything? Yeah, when you've done everything in your entire marriage, you think consciously you've been doing everything you could to make your wife happy and to try to be a provider, to try to do everything you could possibly do. And then you read this book and it's telling you the exact opposite. That's a very hard pill to swallow.
It is. It is. This is why I'm like, oh, I understand that, because when I realized, on my own that I was being controlling, that was a hard pill to swallow. Yeah. It was such a hard pill to swallow, and it hurt because I was like, but I was trying so hard to keep my family together. I was trying so hard to keep myself together, my marriage together. But once I have completely let go of control, all control, right?
Yeah.
And I stepped more into that influencing role, all of a sudden I found myself. And even though, like, it is hard, it is really hard to put that finger back on ourselves and really understand, like, what true ownership is, right?
Yeah.
Like, really, really owning our stuff. It is so, and I'm thinking of another incident that happened last summer. My husband and I kind of got into it a little bit, like, I'm so frustrated with you. And I decided to go on a walk. I'm like, I'm just going to go on a walk because you're making me crazy right now. And so, but one of the feedbacks he was consistently giving me was this idea that you think you're better than me. And I'm like, no, I don't. I do not think I'm better than you in any way. But as I was going on that walk, listening to my thoughts, like, he is so, I never. He is so, I never. He is so, I never.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, he was right. I do think I'm better than him. And I literally just spun on my heel that minute, walked right back home and immediately apologized to him. But the thing is even though it is hard to swallow those humble pills, because they're big.
Yeah.
They are big.
Yeah, we got to choke them down for sure.
Yeah, they're bitter. They're a bit bitter. They are some of the greatest things to help you understand who you truly are, because when you can go and apologize for your behavior, even when you weren't the one that instigated the problem, but you can realize where you were out of line with you, like what you really wanted to be with your truth, somebody you can be proud of.
Right.
That makes you even more proud of yourself.
Yeah.
It's not about like throwing yourself under the bus. Throwing yourself under the bus is legitimately letting everybody else make decisions for you. That is what nice guy syndrome is. Mm-hmm. And that's what nice gal syndrome is letting other people make decisions for you.
Totally.
And once you can start standing in and being comfortable and confident in your own decisions, regardless of how somebody else thinks or feels, because you know it's right for you, and because it's right for you, this is going to help your family. Right? Once you can start doing those things, you're going to feel more confident in yourself. And through that confidence, build boundaries, stop gaslighting, stop that nice guy, gal syndrome happening.
Yeah.
So for you guys, like, number one, I want to thank Trevor for being here today. Like, we will definitely have him back because I feel like this has been so eye-opening, especially for me.
Yeah.
But also, you know, I think that he's just got so many good things to share. If you guys would like some help getting over the nice guy syndrome, reach out to him. Ladies, if you are ready to step back, step into yourself, really stop the gaslighting, grab that confidence, set some boundaries so you can actually provide the space for him to get out of his nice guy syndrome. Don't forget, I also have the Unashamed Image program. It's starting November 7th. Ladies, if you want in on that, please schedule that call. Link is in the description below, or you can go to my website, ErinAndersonTheTraumaCoach.com. Scroll down the page, book a live chat now, and that'll take you to the booking page as well, okay? All right, everyone. Trevor, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. This was so fabulous. I am really excited to have you on again. And until next week, everyone, from my heart to your heart, I'll see you on the other side. Bye, guys. Okay, so I've got a question for you. Have you joined my free Facebook group or Instagram page yet? If you haven't, go and do that. And this is the reason why. I always post my freebies, updated information, and all kinds of goodies for my community in that page. I'm also really active. I post videos. I answer questions. So if you guys really, really want to get in and interact with me, go like me on Facebook, go join my group, The Other Side of the Struggle, Healing from Betrayal Trauma. Come find me on Instagram, Erin Anderson, Betrayal Trauma Coach, and come follow me because I always have something good there just for you, my audience, and I love connecting with you there. I also post anytime that I have groups going on. I talk sometimes about my programs. So if you guys are interested in working with me or even just following me and getting as much free content as you possibly can, go hang out in my group. Go connect with the ladies that are there. Also come and join Immune and Unashamed for those married couples that are following me, because in that group, me and my business partner, Kaisen Kidd, are also talking and offering some great content. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me today and listening in on this podcasting episode. Don't forget to tune in next week. It's gonna be awesome.